Welcome to Horror Echo, where the shadows speak, and every whisper tells a tale of terror. If you crave the thrill of the unknown and the chill of the supernatural, you're in the right place. Dive into the darkest corners of haunted houses, unravel the secrets of cursed objects, and experience spine-tingling stories that will keep you awake at night. Ready to face your fears? Let's get started. The invitation arrived under a veil of secrecy, slipping into their lives as if carried on a ghostly breeze. Each of the 6 recipients was drawn from different walks of life, their only common thread a fascination, whether out of curiosity, skepticism, or obsession, with the supernatural. Evelyn, a seasoned paranormal investigator, had seen her share of haunted houses and restless spirits. Her partner, Mark, was the voice of reason, a skeptic determined to debunk the myths Evelyn sought to prove. Daniel, the historian, was obsessed with the occult, his mind a repository of ancient rituals and forgotten lore. Sarah, an architect with a penchant for crumbling structures, was intrigued by the opportunity to explore a mansion that had been lost to time. Kate, a photographer, found beauty in the macabre and was eager to capture the mansion's decaying grandeur. Lastly, James, a complete non-believer, had joined the group for one purpose only: to prove that ghosts were nothing more than the product of overactive imaginations. The message that brought them together was simple, yet compelling. An old mansion, buried deep within the sprawling, ominous Blackwood forest, held secrets waiting to be uncovered. It spoke of unsolved mysteries and offered a chance to confront the inexplicable. As they gathered at the forest's edge, the invitation in hand, a sense of foreboding gripped each of them. The path through the forest was shrouded in mist, the trees standing like silent sentinels, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers. As they ventured deeper, the world around them seemed to blur, as if they were being drawn into another realm. The mansion, when it finally came into view, was a hulking shadow, its once grand architecture now a ghost of its former self. Vines crept up its walls, and the air around it felt thick, almost suffocating, as if the very atmosphere was charged with a dark energy. The group hesitated at the threshold, but curiosity, and something darker, compelled them to step inside. The mansion's embrace. Once inside, the mansion seemed to close around them like a living, breathing entity, its atmosphere heavy with the weight of countless untold stories. The grand foyer, with its towering ceilings and intricate moldings, spoke of a time when the mansion was a symbol of opulence. Now, however, it was a monument to decay. Dust coated every surface, and the air was thick with the scent of mildew and something else, something metallic, like blood. The walls were adorned with portraits of long-dead occupants, their eyes seeming to follow the group's every movement, as though aware of their presence. The once luxurious furniture was covered in sheets, their outlines ghostly in the dim light. The group spread out, each drawn to different aspects of the mansion. Evelyn's senses were on high alert, every creak and groan of the old house setting her nerves on edge. She could feel something was off, an unnatural chill in the air, a fleeting shadow just beyond her peripheral vision. Daniel, eager to uncover the mansion's secrets, made his way to the library, where shelves upon shelves of ancient, dust-covered books awaited him. He could almost feel the weight of the knowledge contained within, some of it undoubtedly forbidden. Sarah, captivated by the mansion's architecture, ran her hands over the intricate carvings on the banister, marveling at the craftsmanship. Kate, ever the artist, began snapping photos, her camera flashing in the dim light, capturing the mansion's eerie beauty. Mark, trying to maintain his skepticism, dismissed the unsettling noises as nothing more than the house settling. But even he could not entirely shake the feeling of being watched. James, meanwhile, stayed close to the entrance, his bravado fading with each passing moment as the oppressive atmosphere of the mansion began to weigh on him. As they ventured deeper, the mansion seemed to shift, the hallways stretching longer than they should, the shadows growing darker and more menacing. It wasn't long before they realized they were not alone. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came without warning. Kate, who had been photographing a particularly unsettling stain on one of the mansion's walls, a dark, rust-colored blotch that seemed almost alive, suddenly disappeared. One moment she was there, focused on her work, and the next, she was gone, leaving behind only her camera, which lay abandoned on the floor, its lens shattered. The group searched frantically, their calls for Kate echoing through the silent halls, but she was nowhere to be found. When they reviewed the last photo on her camera, their blood ran cold. The image was blurred, but in the background, a dark, indistinct figure could be seen looming behind Kate, as if reaching out to claim her. Panic set in as the group realized that something malevolent was stalking them, picking them off one by one. The once spacious rooms now felt like a claustrophobic maze, each corridor leading them further into the mansion's grasp. The temperature had plummeted, their breath visible in the frigid air, and the walls seemed to hum with a low, almost imperceptible vibration. Mark, desperately clinging to his skepticism, suggested that Kate had simply wandered off, but his voice was strained, betraying his growing fear. Evelyn's intuition told her otherwise. The mansion was alive, and it had just claimed its first victim. The group huddled together, their fear palpable, as they realized they were being hunted. The ritual room. Driven by a need to understand the dark forces at play, Daniel led the group to the basement, convinced that the key to their survival lay in the mansion's hidden past. The descent was treacherous, the stairs narrow and steep, the air growing colder and more oppressive with each step. At the bottom, they were met with a heavy iron door, its surface marred with deep scratches, as if something had tried, and failed, to escape. The door groaned in protest as they pushed it open, revealing a vast, circular chamber that reeked of ancient malevolence. The room was a stark contrast to the rest of the mansion, a place of ritual and sacrifice, untouched by time. The floor was etched with intricate symbols, their meaning lost to all but the most dedicated scholars of the occult. At the center of the room stood an altar, its surface stained with the remnants of long-dried blood, surrounded by the remains of candles that had melted into twisted, grotesque shapes. Daniel's eyes widened as he recognized the symbols, marks of an ancient cult that had worshipped forgotten gods, beings of darkness that thrived on human suffering. This was not just a place of worship, it was a gateway, a portal to something far more sinister. As Daniel explained the room's significance, the others felt a growing sense of dread. The air in the chamber was thick, almost tangible, pressing down on them as if the very room itself was alive. Suddenly, a low, guttural moan echoed through the chamber, and the candles on the altar flared to life, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The mansion was awakening, and it was hungry for more souls. The group recoiled in horror as they realized they had stumbled upon the heart of the mansion's darkness, a place where the line between the living and the dead was thin, and where they were not welcome. The ritual room. Driven by a need to understand the dark forces at play, Daniel led the group to the basement, convinced that the key to their survival lay in the mansion's hidden past. The descent was treacherous, the stairs narrow and steep, the air growing colder and more oppressive with each step. At the bottom, they were met with a heavy iron door, its surface marred with deep scratches, as if something had tried, and failed, to escape. The door groaned in protest as they pushed it open, revealing a vast, circular chamber that reeked of ancient malevolence. The room was a stark contrast to the rest of the mansion, a place of ritual and sacrifice, untouched by time. The floor was etched with intricate symbols, their meaning lost to all but the most dedicated scholars of the occult. At the center of the room stood an altar, its surface stained with the remnants of long-dried blood, surrounded by the remains of candles that had melted into twisted, grotesque shapes. Daniel's eyes widened as he recognized the symbols, marks of an ancient cult that had worshipped forgotten gods, beings of darkness that thrived on human suffering. This was not just a place of worship, it was a gateway, a portal to something far more sinister. As Daniel explained the room's significance, the others felt a growing sense of dread. The air in the chamber was thick, almost tangible, pressing down on them as if the very room itself was alive. Suddenly, a low, guttural moan echoed through the chamber, and the candles on the altar flared to life, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The mansion was awakening, and it was hungry for more souls. The group recoiled in horror as they realized they had stumbled upon the heart of the mansion's darkness, a place where the line between the living and the dead was thin, and where they were not welcome. Shadows in the dark. The discovery of the ritual room marked a turning point for the group, their fear now bordering on hysteria. They were no longer dealing with a simple haunting. This was something far more ancient and malevolent, a force that had been lying in wait for centuries. As they hurried back upstairs, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed, the shadows seeming to stretch and twist in unnatural ways, as if alive. The mansion's layout had changed, the familiar rooms and corridors now leading them deeper into its labyrinthine heart. What had once been a grand house was now a living nightmare, each step taking them further from the safety of the outside world. Evelyn and Mark tried to keep the group together, but the fear was overwhelming, driving wedges between them. James, whose skepticism had once been unshakable, was now on the verge of panic, his bravado crumbling as he realized the reality of their situation. He lashed out at the others, accusing them of playing tricks on him, but even he could not ignore the strange occurrences. The cold drafts that seemed to come from nowhere, the fleeting glimpses of figures in the dark, and the ever-present sense of being watched. It wasn't long before the group began to splinter. Sarah, entranced by a strange, ethereal humming that only she could hear, wandered off on her own, drawn by a force she couldn't explain. The others, unaware of her absence until it was too late, searched desperately for her, but the mansion had claimed another victim. The remaining 4 were now more isolated than ever, their numbers dwindling as the mansion tightened its grip. They were no longer just visitors in a haunted house, they were prisoners in a living nightmare. The haunting. With Sarah's disappearance, the group was teetering on the edge of despair. The mansion's hauntings grew more intense, the very walls seeming to pulse with a malevolent energy. Evelyn, who had faced countless hauntings before, found herself questioning everything she had ever believed. The spirits in this house were not just restless, they were angry, vengeful, and they wanted blood. Mark's skepticism had been thoroughly shattered as he witnessed the impossible. Objects moving of their own accord, doors slamming shut with no one near them, and the chilling whispers that seemed to come from the very walls. The spirits were growing bolder, their presence felt in every room, every shadow. The group began to experience terrifying visions, glimpses of the mansion's dark past. They saw flashes of the rituals that had taken place in the basement, the sacrifices made to appease the dark gods, and the tormented souls trapped within the mansion's walls. These visions were more than just memories, they were a warning, a glimpse of what awaited them if they could not escape. The mansion was no longer just a haunted house, it was a place of pure evil, a nexus of malevolent energy that was growing stronger with each passing moment. The group had only one option left, to find a way out before the mansion consumed them completely. Escape. With the realization that the mansion was alive, feeding on their fear and despair, the group's focus shifted from uncovering its secrets to escaping with their lives. But the mansion was not about to let them go so easily. The corridors twisted and changed, leading them in circles, and the doors that once led outside were now sealed shut, the windows barred with iron. The very walls seemed to close in on them, the ceiling lowering as if to crush them. Mark, driven by the need to protect Evelyn, took charge, leading the group in a desperate search for a way out. They retraced their steps, trying to remember the path they had taken, but the mansion was a labyrinth, its layout shifting with every turn. The shadows that had once been their enemies now seemed to mock them, their laughter echoing through the halls. Daniel, clutching his knowledge of the occult like a lifeline, tried to remember if there was a way to break the mansion's hold on them. He recalled ancient rituals of protection, wards that could banish evil spirits, but without the necessary tools and ingredients, they were powerless. As they neared the front door, their last hope for escape, the mansion made its final move. The door, once so solid and real, dissolved into shadow, leaving only a blank wall in its place. They were trapped. Panic set in as the reality of their situation hit home. They had come seeking answers, but all they had found was death and despair. Now, their only hope was to survive the night and pray that the dawn would bring with it a way out. The final stand. With escape no longer an option, the group made their last stand in the mansion's grand ballroom, a once opulent space now marred by the passage of time. The floorboards creaked ominously beneath their feet, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. They barricaded the doors with whatever they could find, knowing it was a futile gesture against the mansion's wrath, but needing to do something to stave off the rising terror. The spirits were closing in, their presence more tangible than ever, the air around them crackling with energy. Evelyn, drawing on every ounce of her experience, began to perform a cleansing ritual, chanting words of protection in a desperate attempt to banish the spirits. Daniel assisted her, his knowledge of the occult guiding her steps, while Mark and James stood guard, their eyes darting to every shadow, every flicker of movement. The ritual seemed to work at first. The temperature in the room began to rise, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly. But then, with a deafening roar, the mansion fought back. The floor shook, and the walls seemed to close in, the very structure of the house rebelling against their attempts to break free. The spirits, enraged by the ritual, manifested in full force, spectral figures clawing their way out of the walls, their eyes burning with hatred. One by one, they attacked, their touch icy cold, draining the life from their victims. James was the first to fall, his body crumpling to the ground as a spirit passed through him, leaving him a lifeless husk. Mark, fueled by rage and desperation, fought back with everything he had, but the spirits were too many, too powerful. Evelyn and Daniel, still chanting, tried to hold the ritual together, but it was no use. The mansion was too strong, its evil too deeply rooted. As the spirits closed in, the group made one final, desperate attempt to escape, knowing that they were out of time, out of options. The mansion claims its own. The final moments were a blur of terror and pain. The spirits, relentless in their fury, overwhelmed the group, their spectral hands tearing at their flesh, their screams echoing through the mansion's halls. Evelyn, the last to fall, managed one final, defiant cry, a vow that she would never let the mansion win. But even as she spoke the words, she felt the cold grip of death closing around her. As the last of the group succumbed, the mansion seemed to exhale, as if satisfied with its feast. The spirits, their hunger sated, faded back into the walls, their presence lingering like a foul stench. The mansion, now silent once more, stood as it always had, an ancient, malevolent force waiting for its next victims. Outside, the world continued on, unaware of the horrors that had unfolded within. The mansion's secrets remained buried, its true nature hidden from those who would dare to seek it out. But deep within its walls, the spirits of the group remained, trapped in an eternal nightmare, forever bound to the place that had claimed their lives. The forgotten ones. The Blackwood mansion remained standing, untouched by time or nature. It was as if the world had forgotten it, and perhaps that was for the best. But every so often, on a quiet night when the wind was still, whispers could be heard emanating from the mansion, faint, desperate voices calling out for help, for release. The spirits of Evelyn, Mark, Daniel, Sarah, Kate, and James were now part of the mansion's dark legacy, their souls bound to its walls, their fate sealed. The mansion had claimed them, as it had claimed so many before, and as it would claim many more in the years to come. For the Blackwood mansion was no mere house, it was a living entity, a gateway to something far more sinister, and it was always hungry. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the unknown. If tonight's tale left you shivering, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more bone-chilling content from Horror Echo. Remember, the darkness is always watching, so keep your lights on and your mind open. Until next time, stay haunted.